Welcome to the Real News Network. Welcome to Reality Asserts Itself. I'm Paul J. As you can see, we're continuing our discussion in a new studio, but we're still in New York City with Dr. Aleksandr Buzgalin. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Professor Buzgalin teaches political economy, and he's director of the Center for Modern Marxist Studies at Moscow State University. So we're going to pick up where we left off. You go on vacation for a lovely little August, and you get away from it all, and you come back. You're on the Central Committee, youngest member, I guess, maybe in history, I don't know, of the Communist Party. You're at, amongst the most powerful people in the country, and certainly for decades and decades, the Soviet state looked like it would never go anywhere. And you come back from vacation, and there's no more Soviet Union. Communist Party, I think, is probably legalized at this point. Yeltsin is the president, and so that's kind of where we left off the story. We went a little bit further. We talked about the story of the next decade,
Yes.
and the grab for cash, the emergence of the oligarchs, and many whom came from the party itself, from within the state bureaucracy. And we get to the end of the 90s with a fairly established class of now billionaires and becoming billionaires, and a very chaotic state, and Putin becomes the new leader. And that's sort of where we left off. The sort of common narrative around this period after Putin becomes leader is that this is the story of the rise of a one-man dictatorship. And this is what the story of this whole next period of the Russian state is. What do you make of that?
First of all, we do not have, and we didn't have from the very beginning, dictatorship of Putin. In the beginning of his epoch, or better to say in the beginning of 21st century in our country, we had another style of life. It was continuation of the power of oligarchs with top officials. It was partnership and friendship with the West in the beginning, by the way. Partnership with NATO, partnership with the United States. Even later, Putin was main advocate for joining to WTO. In Russia, we had very big opposition.
World Trade Organization.
Yeah, World Trade Organization. Majority of Russian, even business people majority, not as far as money is concerned, but as far as number of businessmen is concerned. So majority even of business people were against joining to WTO, to World Trade Organization.
So Putin advocated more of an integration with the Western capitalism.
So he became Putin, let's say, in modern sense of this word, only after crisis 2007, 2009. Before it was only some elements, some trends, maybe. And about democracy and dictatorship, in that period we had the growth of statism, but mainly in ideology, growth of Russian conservatism, but mainly in ideology, and it was not so strong. It was domination of liberal ideas before world crisis 2007, 2010. That was the trend. And it was, I want to remind, period when we had enormously high prices on oil and gas. It was up to $150 per gallon. And Russia had enormous amount of dollars for really nothing. It led to the enormous enrichment of oligarchs, but also some resources came to workers in budget sector, education, healthcare, to bureaucracy. It was enormous growth of bureaucracy, and a little bit for ordinary workers and peasants.
And we talked earlier in the previous segment about even most of the oligarchs, as in medieval times, realized there needed to be a king because the competition between the oligarchs would threaten the systems of the oligarchs.
Yeah, it's true.
And they needed a state to play that kind of role. But in terms of Putin and the role of that state, there's their perception again in the West that it kind of gets used in a way that enhances Putin's power in the sense that he can favor these oligarchs and disfavor those. And in a sense, the state becomes more important than the oligarchs.
It's true and not true. If any oligarch, any billionaire, and in Russia we have hundreds, more than 100 owners of more than $1 billion. And
more than 100 billionaires.
Yeah. And the country is much not so rich as the United States or China. It's 10 times, maybe not less than 10 times, but many times less than United States or China. So if any from these oligarchs will decide to attack rules of the game, or personally president and his team, he will be in prison, or he must immigrate and so on. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that state became more important than class of oligarchs and top bureaucrats. First of all, it is not even class, it is strata inside class of bourgeoisie. We have very diversified class of bourgeoisie, very different types of bourgeoisie. And inside ruling strata, new nomenclatura, it's name of which Vasilinsky used for Soviet bureaucrats. And now it's very similar. A few thousand of people with families, kids, and so on, who are real rulers, who concentrate economic and political power.
Because they control ministries,
they control,
regulation.
Yeah, executive power, they control ruling party, they control administration of president, and they control main part of wealth of Russia. 70% of Russian wealth is concentrated in the hands of less than 1% of population.
We know that
and
number
key
here,
resources
too.
in the hands of a few families, no, I don't know, 100, 200 families. Yeah. The problem is that they have common interest, but they have clans, like in, I don't know, court of Louis XIV or XV, yeah, in France. Different clans of aristocracy fighting between themselves, but generally speaking, it is one power, one strata of aristocrats who has power. The same in Russia. We have different clans, regional clans, clans interconnected with military-industrial complex, with oil and gas, with small difference between state gas and oil corporations and private gas and oil corporations. But difference is small, because top managers of state corporation are also oligarchs. And the private owners of private corporations are under the control of bureaucracy. So in Russia, state and private means not too much, it's not very big difference, unfortunately. And they have common interest. And this common interest led to the stagnation of economy, because the development can be realized only if big money from this capital, oligarchic capital, bureaucratic capital will be used for investments in high-tech technologies. And it will be a redistribution of power, not simply of money, but redistribution of power. It will be new active class of engineers, creators, business people, but productive business people, not speculators and those who take rent from the oil, and they will lose their power. So if we have not simply growth, but development, new quality of development, this strata will lose the power. That's why for them it's not profitable to change economic, social standards of life, of rules of the game, better to say. And for other populations, this is stagnation, and stagnation on the low level with very big social differentiation. During last decade, we have more or less the same. After crisis 2007, 2010, it was 10% decline of production. Then we had small growth. After 5 years, more or less the same level as 2007, then minus 2%, plus 1%, 0, plus 2%, near zero. And finally, after 25, I will finish on this, after 25 years of transformation from so-called inefficient Soviet economy of Soviet Russia inside Soviet Union, we have only plus 15%, 25 years and only plus 15%. And this
in
plus,
productivity.
In production, yeah.
Production.
Gross national product. Less than 1% per year during 25 years with all zigzags. And the quality is another.
Well, that's kind of dramatic number, because given computerization and such, productivity and gross national product in the West has gone far, far higher than that.
And if we compare with China, which had similar problems, but China had minimum 7% per year. And in the average 8.5. Yeah, and
So what does this mean in terms of the life of working people and what their expectations were? You remember in an earlier segment, you were saying, everyone thought get rid of the Communist Party and socialism, and everyone's going to have, capitalism without capitalists. It's going to be, utopia.
Utopia, unfortunately. So, first of all, as I said, during first years of so-called market reforms, shock without therapy, we had the terrible decline of production, incomes, and social differentiation. We received real poverty. And before it was impossible. And poverty for not only lazy people, liberal dogma, but intelligentsia became extremely poor, workers became extremely poor. After this, high prices on oil, life became a little better, but what we have now, let's move to modern situation. As I said, 20 million people from 150, little less in Russia, are living under the poverty level. And poverty level is 10,000 rubles. 10,000 rubles is 160.
Say that stat again.
10,000 rubles is poverty level.
And how many people below
We have 20 million people less who has less than 10,000 rubles.
At this time?
At this time. And this is continuation. Before was sometimes little less, sometimes little worse, but more or less the same. What is 10,000 rubles? It is $160 per month. Of course, purchasing power of dollar is higher, but if you want to buy normal equipment, you will pay even more than in the United States. If you want to buy bread, it will be little less. So that's why it is poverty. Wage of majority of Russians, working Russians, is less than 30,000 rubles per month. This is $500. This is not poverty, but still country is rich with oil.
Majority of people earning that wage.
50% has less than $500 per month. And in the same time, we have one of the best, second or third place as far as number of billionaires is concerned. And billions not of rubles, but billions of dollars. And they are buying football teams, palaces, 230 meters long yachts, and so on, in the country with such situation.
So Putin is the face of this system. Whether he has as much power as people think he does or not, he's powerful, and the state is powerful, but he's the face of this system. Why, if in fact he's running at 70% or so popularity, if that's true, why?
This is a big question.
So we'll talk about why Putin seems to remain so popular in spite of tremendous inequality in this society. So please join us for the continuation of Reality Asserts Itself with Professor Buzgalin on the Real News Network.